My wife's office fling toasted me as the pathetic loser funding our future. During her company's holiday party, every single lie fell upon me. I walked out, completely speechless. The very next morning, his CEO directly phoned my wife. The entire merger is off. Tell your boyfriend to never step foot in this office again, and you must call your husband and start begging. Do you ever wonder what happens when the quiet person in the room, the one everyone underestimates, finally decides they've had enough? Because I can tell you exactly what it looks like. It looks like a Christmas party, a glass of champagne, and a public humiliation that turned into a meticulously orchestrated downfall. I should have known that night was going to be different. Rebecca, my wife at the time, spent 3 hours getting ready. 3. For a work Christmas party. I remember she'd bought this new red dress weeks earlier, form-fitting, the kind that screamed for attention. She dragged me shopping, and when I dared suggest a more understated blue, she just waved me off. You don't understand office politics, she'd said. Image matters. I didn't argue. I rarely did. The party was at the Riverside Hotel, one of those ridiculously opulent places with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. Rebecca's firm always went all out. Open bar, live band, catered dinner. It was less about celebration and more about strategic networking, every conversation a carefully planned chess move. I'd been to 4 of these things, and they all felt the same. Forced small talk, corporate buzzwords, and me, standing awkwardly by the appetizer table while Rebecca worked the room. But this year felt different. There was an electric buzz in the air, an excitement I couldn't quite put my finger on. People kept congratulating Rebecca, patting her on the back, whispering things that made her flash that secretive smile. Big things coming, one guy had winked. You're riding the right wave. She just smiled, sipping her champagne, basking in it all. And then there was Dante. You couldn't miss him. He was holding court near the bar, surrounded by a gaggle of younger associates who hung on his every word. He had that presence, tall, broad-shouldered, an expensive suit, perfect teeth. The kind of guy who'd been told he was special his entire life, and he believed it. He was Rebecca's work husband. That's what she called him anyway. It started about 8 months ago, when they got assigned to the same project. Dante is hilarious, she'd say at dinner, scrolling through her work messages. Dante has the best stories. Dante thinks I should go for the promotion. At first, I tried to tell myself it was harmless. Work friendships happen, right? But then the late nights started. The weekend emergency meetings. The times she'd come home smelling like a cologne that definitely wasn't mine, laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. I'm not stupid. I knew what was happening. But here's the insidious thing about betrayal. It doesn't hit you all at once. It's a slow burn, a series of small, unsettling moments that accumulate until, one day, you wake up and realize you've been living in a house that's been on fire for months. The dinner portion of the party dragged on forever. I sat next to Rebecca at a table with other people from her department. All they talked about was the merger, this massive deal that had been in the works for over a year. Ironwood Capital was acquiring Rebecca's firm, creating some kind of financial powerhouse. Dante, apparently, was the star of the whole operation. He'd been managing the integration team, coordinating everything. According to the whispers around me, he was a shoo-in for VP once the deal closed. January 15th, someone said, raising their glass. That's the big day. Once all the signatures are in, it's official. Rebecca beamed, her eyes darting across the room to Dante. That look, I used to think was reserved for me. I just pushed my salmon around my plate, saying nothing. Then came the toast. Dessert was being served. Someone had given Dante the microphone, probably as a joke, probably because everyone knew he loved being the center of attention. He stood up, grinning, champagne glass in hand. I want to make a toast, he announced, and the room quieted. To all of us, but especially to the people who made this merger happen. To late nights and early mornings, and to Rebecca, who's been crushing it on the integration docs. Rebecca actually blushed. She put her hand over her heart like she'd just won an Oscar. Then Dante turned. He looked directly at me. And his grin, it sharpened. And of course, he said, his voice dripping with something I couldn't quite name, to the loser paying for our future. He raised his glass toward me. The room exploded with laughter. Not polite chuckles. Real, genuine laughter, the kind that echoed off the walls and made the chandeliers seem brighter. Someone at the next table actually slapped their knee. A woman near the dessert station covered her mouth, trying to hide her grin. Rebecca laughed too. Threw her head back. Put her hand on her chest, the whole performance. Then she looked at Dante with this expression, pride, maybe affection, like he'd just done something clever instead of something cruel. I felt every pair of eyes in that room on me, waiting. Watching to see what I'd do. I slowly set down my fork. The metallic clink against the plate seemed impossibly loud. I leaned back in my chair, looked at Dante, and said just one word, classy. Then I stood up. No dramatic exit. No throwing my napkin down, no shoving my chair back. I just stood, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit. I passed clusters of coworkers who suddenly found their shoes very interesting. Past the interns who were trying not to stare. Past Rebecca's friend, Colleen, who opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. Rebecca called after me once, "Babe, come on." It was just a joke. I didn't turn around. I got to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The parking lot was quiet, except for the muffled sound of music from inside the hotel. Through the windows, I could see the party continuing like nothing had happened. Like I'd never been there at all. I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't punch the dashboard or peel out of the parking lot. I just started the engine and drove home in complete silence. Our house was dark when I got back. I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to my office, a small room off the hallway that Rebecca called my man cave in that slightly condescending way. It had my desk, my computer, a bookshelf full of policy manuals and compliance guides that Rebecca always joked about whenever friends came over. Look at Mr. Exciting over here with his regulatory frameworks. Everyone always laughed. I powered up my computer and opened the folder I'd been building for 6 months. Ironwood Acquisition Internal Documents. Inside were subfolders. Lots of them, organized by date, by type, by relevance. I'm good at organizing. It's literally my job. See, here's what Rebecca never bothered to learn about me. I'm not just some finance guy. I'm the external compliance officer for her firm. It's a specialized role, the kind most people don't understand and fewer people care about. I make sure deals are clean. I review contracts for conflicts of interest. I'm the last signature on major transactions, specifically because I'm supposed to catch problems before they become disasters. I'm the safety net everyone forgets about until they desperately need it. The Ironwood merger was massive, $2.3 billion. Combining two firms with overlapping portfolios, creating potential antitrust issues that required careful navigation. It had been in the works for months, moving through board approvals, regulatory reviews, stakeholder meetings. And sitting in Clause 14B of the merger agreement, buried in legal language that most people skimmed over, was a requirement I'd personally drafted 6 years ago. Execution of final terms contingent upon full endorsement from External Compliance Officer, ECO, reflecting conflict of interest clearance and ethics compliance. Translation: I had veto power. If I didn't sign, the deal didn't happen. Nobody really thought about that clause. It was supposed to be a formality, a rubber stamp. In the 3 major deals I'd overseen since joining the firm, I'd signed off on all of them without issue. But this one was different, because this one involved my wife's lover. I opened the subfolder labeled Timeline Evidence and started scrolling. June 14th, first email between Rebecca and Dante that seemed off. Subject: dinner meeting ran late. Message: thanks for walking me to my car and for the wine and for listening. You're the best work husband a girl could ask for. Signed with a heart emoji. June 22nd, Rebecca told me she was going to the gym. I tracked her phone location, something I'm not proud of, but I was already suspicious. She was at the Marriott downtown. She didn't leave until 11:47 p.m. July 3rd, found a hotel receipt in her purse while looking for aspirin. Room 614, Hilton Garden Inn, 2-night stay. Same weekend, she told me she was at a training conference in Chicago. Dante had posted an Instagram story from a bar that same weekend. I recognized the brick wall behind him. Same hotel. July 18th. Overheard part of a phone conversation. She was in the bedroom, door closed, voice low. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy with his spreadsheets to notice. Then she laughed. I know, right? It's kind of perfect. August 2nd. Her calendar said client dinner, 6 to 9 p.m. I drove past her office at 8:30. Her car was gone. I checked the parking garage of Dante's apartment building. Her white Lexus was there, tucked in a corner spot. I took a picture. Timestamp, 8:43 p.m. The evidence went on and on. Text I'd recovered from our phone bill. Credit card charges for lingerie I'd never seen. Restaurant receipts for 2 at places she'd never taken me. Calendar discrepancies where her stories didn't match her locations. I'd been documenting everything with the same precision I used for work. Dates, times, locations, screenshots, photos. Everything organized. Everything backed up in 3 places. I wasn't emotional about it anymore. The anger had burned itself out sometime in August. Now it was just data. Cold. Factual. Irrefutable data. And sitting in another subfolder, labeled legal preparation, was something I'd been working on for 3 weeks. A draft separation agreement. Clean. Fair. Thorough. I'd even left her the house. I didn't care about the house. I just wanted out. But I'd been waiting. Waiting for the right moment. And tonight, Dante had gift-wrapped it for me. I pulled up the merger documents and found the section listing key personnel. There was Dante's name, Darius Matthew Langdon, Integration Team Lead. Right below Rebecca's, Rebecca Langdon, Senior Operations Advisor. They'd been so careful, never arriving at events together, never sitting next to each other at company functions, always maintaining that professional distance in public. But tonight, Dante had gotten cocky. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the excitement of the deal closing soon. Maybe he just couldn't resist humiliating me one more time. Whatever the reason, he'd made a mistake. Because his entire future, his promotion, his VP title, his career trajectory, it was all tied to a merger that required my signature. A merger I could kill with one phone call. I looked at the clock. 11:34 p.m. Rebecca was still at the party. Probably dancing with Dante. Probably celebrating their future together. I opened my encrypted messaging client and started typing. I didn't sleep that night. Rebecca came home at 1:47 a.m. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Heard her humming something off-key as she made her way upstairs. She smelled like Prosecco and would smoke from the venue's fire pit when she slid into bed next to me. I kept my eyes closed, breathing steady, pretending to be asleep. Her phone buzzed 3 times on the nightstand, all from the same contact. I didn't need to look to know who it was. She sighed, this dreamy, satisfied sound, and whispered into the darkness. I think that was the best Christmas party we've ever had. I didn't respond. Just counted my heartbeats and waited for morning. At 6 a.m., I got up, showered, and made coffee. Rebecca was still asleep. Makeup smeared on her pillow, one arm flung out across my side of the bed. I took my coffee into my office and closed the door. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Time, my phone rang. Harland Hughes, chairman of Eastern Equity Holdings, the parent company overseeing the Ironwood acquisition. I'd sent him a message the night before. Need to talk. 9 a.m. Ironwood deal. Signature withheld. Harland didn't waste time with pleasantries. Tell me. I took a breath. I'm pulling my signature on the Ironwood merger. Silence. Then, problem? Personal. Another pause. Harland was in his 60s, had been navigating corporate politics since before I was born. He understood what personal meant in this context. It meant someone had crossed a line. It meant there was rot in the foundation. Names, he said. I gave them. First Dante. Then Rebecca. Well, damn, he exhaled slowly. You're sure about this? I was sure last night. All right. His voice was crisp, businesslike. Consider it done. I'll alert compliance and legal. You'll have updated documents by the end of day. Thank you. One more thing, Harlan said. This Dante character, He's the integration lead? Yes. Then he's done. Anyone stupid enough to publicly disrespect the man holding the last signature doesn't deserve to be in this business. I appreciate that. No appreciation necessary. This is just good management. He paused. You need anything else? No. Just wanted to give you the heads up. Understood. Take care of yourself. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, staring at my coffee mug. It was from a company retreat 3 years ago. Had the firm's logo printed on the side. I wondered if I'd still have it in a few months, or if it would end up in a donation box somewhere. Then I heard Rebecca moving around upstairs. Water running. The hairdryer. The familiar sounds of her morning routine. I finished my coffee and went upstairs. She was in the bathroom, wrapped in her robe, applying mascara. She smiled at me in the mirror. Morning, babe. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Yeah, I bet. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded amused. Sorry about last night. Dante always takes jokes too far. You know how he is. Yeah, I said. I know exactly how he is. She missed the edge in my voice entirely. Just kept applying her makeup, humming the same tune she'd been humming when she came home. What time do you have to be at the office? I asked. 10:30, I've got a call with the integration team. We're finalizing some last-minute details before the holidays. She met my eyes in the mirror. This merger is going to change everything for us. Dante says once it closes, I'm basically guaranteed that VP position I've been wanting. Dante says. Yeah, he's been amazing through this whole process. Really mentored me, you know. I nodded slowly. I'm sure he has. She turned around, studying my face. For a second, I thought she might actually see it. The calm before the storm. The careful composure of a man who'd already set everything in motion. But she just smiled and kissed my cheek. Don't stress about the party. Nobody even remembers that toast. It was just drunk people being stupid, right? Just drunk people being stupid. She went back to her makeup. I left the bathroom and went downstairs, listening to her move around above me, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to collapse. My phone buzzed at 10:15 a.m. A message from Harlan's assistant. Documents updated. Compliance hold initiated. Personnel review scheduled. We'll keep you informed. I texted back, proceed accordingly. At 10:47 a.m., I imagined Dante walking into the office, coffee in hand, new watch on his wrist, that same swagger he always had. I imagined him greeting people, high-fiving the junior associates, basking in the glow of last night's victory. I wondered how long it would take for him to notice that something was wrong. Rebecca left for work at 10:20, kissing me goodbye like it was any other Thursday. She was wearing her power suit, the navy one with the subtle pinstripes that she said made her look executive-ready. Her heels clicked confidently down the driveway. I watched from the window as she backed out of the garage, checked her lipstick in the rearview mirror, and drove away. Then I sat down and waited. The first sign that things were moving came at 11:34 a.m. My phone buzzed with an email from the firm's legal department. Ironwood merger compliance review initiated. The email was sparse on details, but heavy on implications. All merger-related activities were suspended pending a review of personnel conflicts and ethical considerations. Key team members would be called in for interviews. Integration work would be paused indefinitely. I could picture the chaos this was causing. Somewhere in the downtown offices, executives were scrambling, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. The deal was supposed to be done. Signatures collected, terms agreed upon, champagne ready for the January closing. Now everything was frozen. At 12:06 p.m., I got a text from an old colleague at the firm, Trevor. Dude, what's happening? Merger's on hold. People are freaking out. I didn't respond. At 12:43 p.m., Trevor texted again. Dante just got called to HR, saw him go up to the 4th floor looking confused as hell. I allowed myself a small smile. Here's what I knew was happening in that moment. Dante was walking into a conference room where 3 people were already waiting. HR Director Karen Mitchell, who'd been with the firm for 15 years and had zero tolerance for ethical violations. David Chin from legal, who specialized in compliance issues and contract law. and someone from risk management, whose job was to assess potential damage to the company's reputation. There would be a folder on the table. Inside that folder would be carefully selected pieces of evidence. Nothing from my personal files. Nothing that would reveal I was the source. Just enough to make the case that Dante had engaged in an undisclosed relationship that created a conflict of interest with the merger. They'd start gently. "Mr. Langdon, we're conducting a routine review." He'd probably laugh it off at first, flash that confident smile. "Is this about the Christmas party? Come on, it was just a joke." Then they'd show him the first document. Maybe a screenshot of a Slack message between him and Rebecca, something flirty, but professional enough to have plausible deniability. "This is nothing," he'd say. "We're friends. We work together." Then they'd show him the hotel records, the credit card statements, the calendar overlaps. The smile would start to fade. Finally, they'd pull out the merger agreement and point to Clause 14B. They'd explain, in very careful language, that the external compliance officer had raised concerns about conflicts of interest. They'd explain that his relationship with Rebecca, the wife of said compliance officer, constituted a violation. That's when he'd realize he was done. My phone buzzed at 1:52 p.m. Another text from Trevor. "Holy crap. Dante just got walked out. Security and everything. What the hell did he do?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No idea. Probably something to do with the merger complications." This is insane. Rebecca must be losing her mind. Probably. I put my phone down and made myself lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, a glass of water. I ate slowly, methodically, tasting nothing. At 2:06 p.m., Rebecca's phone rang. I knew because she'd left her location sharing on, had for months. Probably never realized I could see where she was at all times. The little blue dot on my phone showed she was in her office downtown. The call came from Raymond Teague, the firm's CEO, a man who didn't make personal calls unless something was catastrophically wrong. I wished I could have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. I imagined Rebecca answering cheerfully, "Ray, hey, is this about the statement?" I was just about to reach out. "Don't." One word. Flat. Cold. I said, "Don't speak. Just listen." A pause while her brain tried to catch up. Tried to process why her CEO sounded like he was delivering a death sentence. "Your boyfriend is done here. Finished. Tell him to never step foot in this office again." Silence on her end. The kind of silence that physically hurts. "And you," Raymond would continue, his voice somehow even colder. "You should call your husband and start begging." Click. I imagined Rebecca sitting at her desk, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to dead air. Imagined her hands starting to shake. Imagined the carefully constructed future she'd been building with Dante crumbling in real time. My phone rang at 2:14 p.m. Rebecca's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 2:16. Again at 2:19. Then a text. "Please pick up. Something's wrong." Another text. "Dante got fired. They're saying it's about the merger. Do you know anything?" Another. "Please, I need to talk to you." I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The November air was cold. The kind that stung your face and made your breath visible. I walked through our neighborhood, past houses decorated with Christmas lights and inflatable Santas. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. I wonder what they'd think if they knew what was happening in my house right now. If they knew that across town, my wife was probably having a panic attack in her office, while her lover was being escorted out of the building by security. I walked. For 2 hours, letting my mind go blank, letting the cold numb everything. When I got back home at 4:30 p.m., Rebecca's car was in the driveway. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch with her laptop closed beside her. She looked pale, her mascara smudged, her power suit somehow rumpled despite being perfectly pressed that morning. "Where were you?" she asked. Her voice was small. "Scared. Walking. I've been calling you for hours. Phone died." She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "Did you hear about Dante?" "I heard they fired him." "Just fired him." Said it was a conflict of interest violation related to the merger. She was talking fast, the words tumbling out. But that doesn't make any sense. Dante was running the integration. He was the key person. Why would they fire him right before the deal closes? I shrugged. Maybe there was a problem they didn't tell you about. But what problem? And why is the merger on hold? Everyone's saying it's because of compliance issues, but nobody knows what that means. She was starting to spiral, starting to put pieces together, but not quite seeing the full picture yet. I don't know, Rebecca. I'm sure they'll figure it out. She stared at me. You're in compliance. Don't you know what's happening? I know there's a review, that's all. Can't you? I don't know, ask someone? Find out what's going on. I could, I said slowly. But I don't think that would be appropriate, given the circumstances. What circumstances? I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman I'd married 7 years ago. The woman who'd promised to love and cherish me. The woman who'd spent the last 8 months sneaking around with her coworker while I paid for everything. You should check the dining room table, I said. Her brow furrowed. What? There's something there for you. A key. Confusion flashed across her face, but she went to the dining room. I heard her footsteps stop. Heard the small intake of breath when she saw it. The silver key, old, simple, sitting in the center of the table like an offering. Next to it, a note in my handwriting. All further communication will be handled by counsel. You'll want to keep this. It opens a box you'll need soon. I heard her pick up the key. Heard the paper crinkle as she read the note again. What is this? She called out, voice rising. What box? My office. Bottom shelf, behind the law books. I heard her moving. Heard her heels clicking on the hardwood as she rushed to my office. Heard the door bang open. Heard books being shoved aside. Then, silence. I imagined her finding the black metal lockbox, the one she'd forgotten existed, the one she probably assumed held boring tax documents and old receipts. I imagined her hands shaking as she inserted the key. I imagined the moment the lock clicked open. The scream that came from my office wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was a sound of pure devastation. The kind of noise a person makes when their world ends all at once. I stayed in the living room, staring at the wall, listening to her sob. Inside that box was everything. Every email. Every text message. Every hotel receipt. Every parking garage photo. Calendar discrepancies highlighted in yellow. Credit card statements with suspicious charges circled in red. Screenshots of her and Dante leaving restaurants together, entering hotels together, sitting in his car in dark parking lots. There were hundreds of pieces of evidence, all organized by date, all annotated with notes in my careful handwriting. And at the very bottom, underneath all the proof of her betrayal, was a draft separation agreement. Clean. Fair. Generous, even. I'd left her the house, most of the savings, her car. I wasn't trying to destroy her financially. I just wanted out. The sticky note on the first page said, "You always said you wanted freedom. Consider this your Christmas bonus." I heard her stumbling out of the office. Heard her bracing herself against the hallway wall. When she appeared in the living room doorway, her face was blotchy and red, her breath coming in gasps. "How long?" she whispered. 6 months? You've known for 6 months? Since June. She stared at me like I was a stranger. And you just collected evidence? Like I was some kind of criminal. You committed adultery. In a lot of places, that is criminal. So what? You were just waiting? Planning this? Yes. The simple honesty of it seemed to hit her harder than any accusation could have. She sank down onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Is this why Dante got fired? Did you do something? I didn't answer. She looked up at me, and I saw the moment realization fully dawned. Saw her remember my job title. My role in the company. The signature I'd mentioned once or twice that nobody really paid attention to. Oh my God, she breathed. The compliance review. The merger hold. That was you. That was me. You destroyed his career. No, I corrected. He destroyed his own career when he decided to sleep with the compliance officer's wife, and then publicly humiliate said compliance officer at the Christmas party. This is insane. This is. She was hyperventilating. You can't just think $1 billion merger because your feelings got hurt. I didn't think it. I just removed the compromised parties. The merger will proceed just fine without Dante. And without you. Without me? I didn't get fired. Not yet, I said calmly. But give it time. HR is probably drafting your termination paperwork right now. Her phone rang. She grabbed it desperately, looked at the screen, and her face went even paler. It's HR, she whispered. You should answer that. She did, with shaking hands. Hello. I could hear the tiny voice on the other end, though not the words. But I could see Rebecca's reaction, the way her shoulders slumped, the way her eyes filled with tears, the way she kept saying, but, before eventually just mumbling, okay, and hanging up. They want to see me tomorrow morning, she said hollowly. They called it an end-of-contract review. That's HR speak for you're fired, but we need to do it officially. This can't be happening. It is happening. It's been happening. You just didn't notice. She looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. Why? Why would you do this? You stood there last night and laughed when Dante called me a loser. You laughed while he mocked me in front of everyone I work with. You've been lying to me for 8 months, sneaking around, spending our money on hotel rooms with your boyfriend. You called me your walking paycheck. I kept my voice level emotionless. Did you really think there would be no consequences? I was going to end it, she said quickly. After the holidays, I was going to break it off with Dante and work on our marriage. No, you weren't. Yes, I was. Rebecca, I have 8 months of evidence that says otherwise. I have texts where you talk about leaving me. I have emails where you and Dante discussed your future together. I have receipts from the ring store where you were apparently looking at engagement rings with him last month. I leaned forward slightly. You were never going to end it. You were just waiting for the merger to close so you could leave me from a position of strength. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The only problem, I continued, is that you forgot one crucial detail. You forgot to check who had the actual power in this situation. You thought Dante was your ticket to the top. You thought his promotion was guaranteed. You thought you were so clever, building your exit strategy, planning your escape. I stood up. But you built your future on a foundation that required my approval. And I didn't approve. I walked to the door, grabbed my coat from the rack. Where are you going? She asked. Hotel. I'll be staying there until you move out. Move out? This is my house too. Read the separation agreement. I'm giving you the house. I don't want it anymore. I don't want anything that reminds me of you. Please, she said. And now she was crying. Really crying. Please, can't we just talk about this? Can't we try to fix it? I looked at her one last time. The woman who'd promised to love me. Who'd shared my life for 7 years. Who'd thrown it all away for someone who made her laugh at parties. No, I said simply. We can't. And I left. I checked into a Hilton about 15 miles from our house. Nice room, clean sheets, a view of the highway that was somehow peaceful in its consistency. Cars going places, people with destinations. I ordered room service, a burger I didn't taste, and fries I didn't finish, and sat on the bed with my laptop, watching emails roll in. The first was from Harland, Langdon removed from all merger documents. Wife flagged for ethics review. Board meeting scheduled for Monday to discuss revised timeline. You did the right thing. The second was from the HR director. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. Appropriate action being taken with all parties involved. The third was from my lawyer, confirming receipt of the separation agreement and advising me that we could file as soon as I gave the word. I gave the word. Over the next 3 days, I watched from a distance as everything unraveled. Dante became toxic overnight. Nobody would return his calls. His LinkedIn profile suddenly showed open to work and stayed that way. I heard through the grapevine, people still talked to me, still respected me, because I'd never been the problem, that he'd applied to 7 firms in 4 days and been rejected by all of them. Word spreads fast in our industry. Conflict of interest violation is corporate speak for don't touch this person with a 10-foot pole. Rebecca lasted slightly longer, but not by much. She went to her HR meeting on Friday morning and came out an hour later with a box of her belongings and a severance package that was probably more generous than she deserved. Her title wasn't stripped away dramatically. Her contract simply wasn't renewed. They cited restructuring and changing priorities, but everyone knew what it really meant. By the following Monday, both of them were gone from the firm's directory. Pictures removed, email addresses deactivated, security clearances revoked. They'd been scrubbed from the company's history like they'd never existed. I returned to the office that Monday to a strange new respect. People nodded at me in the hallways. Senior partners who'd never learned my name suddenly wanted to have coffee. The CEO sent me a personal email, thanking me for my integrity and dedication to the firm's values. Nobody mentioned Rebecca. Nobody mentioned Dante. Nobody mentioned the Christmas party. It was like it had all been a bad dream that everyone had agreed to forget. But I hadn't forgotten. On Tuesday, I got a call from Harland. "We're restructuring the merger," he said. "New team, new timeline, new leadership. We'd like you to take a more active role. Lead strategic advisor. You'd be overseeing the entire integration process." "That's quite a promotion," I said. "You've earned it. You showed judgment and integrity in a situation where most people would have just looked the other way. That's the kind of leadership we need." "I accept." "Good. We'll announce it publicly on Thursday. Press release, board statement, the works. This is your moment." He wasn't wrong. On Thursday morning, my name and face were in every major business publication in the region. "Ironwood merger back on track under new leadership," read one headline. "Strategic advisor Henry Mercer to guide restructured deal," read another. There were photos of me at the press conference, shaking hands with board members, standing in front of presentations outlining the new merger timeline. I looked calm, professional, confident. I looked like a man who'd won. Because I had. Rebecca tried to call me 11 times in the 2 weeks following her termination. I didn't answer any of them. She sent emails, long, rambling things full of apologies and justifications and desperate pleas for another chance. I set up a filter that sent them directly to a folder I never opened. She showed up at the hotel once. The front desk called my room to ask if I wanted to see a Rebecca Langdon. I said no. She tried reaching out through mutual friends. They awkwardly delivered her messages, which all amounted to the same thing. "She's really sorry. She wants to talk. She says it's not too late to fix this." I told every single one of them the same thing. It's been too late for 8 months. She just didn't realize it. Dante, on the other hand, went dark completely. No social media updates, no LinkedIn activity, no sightings around town. Someone said he'd moved back to his hometown somewhere in Ohio. Someone else heard he was driving for Uber. I didn't care enough to verify either story. The separation agreement was finalized in early January. Rebecca signed it without contesting anything. I think by that point, she understood that fighting me would only make things worse. I'd already demonstrated what I was capable of when pushed. She didn't want to find out what else I could do. The house went to her along with most of our shared savings and her car. I took my retirement accounts, my personal belongings, and my dog, a golden retriever named Cooper she'd never liked anyway. We divided our marriage as cleanly as a business contract, with lawyers and signatures and deadlines. No drama. No fighting. Just paperwork. On January 15th, the day the merger was originally supposed to close, I sat in a boardroom overlooking the city with 15 other executives and signed the revised agreement. My signature went last, right at the bottom, exactly where it had always been meant to go. The merger was officially complete. $2.3 billion finalized, done. And I was sitting at the head of the new table. February brought a fresh start in more ways than one. I moved into a downtown apartment. Top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city that Rebecca had always wanted, but I'd never been able to afford before. My new salary as lead strategic advisor made a lot of things possible. I bought new furniture. Got a gym membership I actually used. Started cooking meals I'd never had time to make before. Cooper loved the new place. Loved the dog park 2 blocks away. Loved the space to run. I loved the quiet. No more waiting up wondering when Rebecca would come home. No more checking her phone when she left it on the counter. No more pretending I didn't notice the perfume that wasn't hers, or the receipts that didn't make sense. Just peace. One evening in mid-February, I was sitting on my new couch with Cooper's head in my lap, half watching a documentary about space exploration when my phone buzzed. It was Trevor. From work. Dude, did you see this? He'd attached a screenshot of a LinkedIn post. Rebecca had posted an update, excited to announce I'm beginning a new chapter, looking forward to exploring opportunities in consulting and project management. Open to conversations with firms looking for dedicated, experienced leadership. Hashtag open to work, hashtag new beginnings. The comments were sparse. A few good lucks from distant acquaintances. But notably absent were comments from anyone at our old firm. Anyone from Dante's network. Anyone who mattered in our industry. She'd tried 15 firms in 6 weeks, according to another colleague who kept me updated despite my not asking. All rejections. The Whisper network had done its job. Everyone knew what had happened, even if the details were fuzzy. Involved in that merger collapse. Ethics issues, I heard. Conflict of interest with her compliance officer husband. The story had morphed and changed as it spread, but the core message remained. Rebecca Langdon was a liability. Touch her and risk contamination. I looked at the LinkedIn post for exactly 3 seconds, then deleted Trevor's message. That chapter was closed. A week later, I met someone. Her name was Adriana. She worked in architecture, and she'd never heard of the Ironwood merger or Darius Langdon or any of it. We met at a coffee shop. She was reading a book on sustainable design. I was reviewing a contract. We started talking. One conversation turned into 2, turned into dinner, turned into a second date, and a third. She was smart, funny, passionate about her work. She asked me questions about my job and actually listened to the answers. She remembered details from previous conversations. She never once pulled out her phone to text her work husband. On our 4th date, she asked me about my divorce. It's recent, I admitted. Finalized last month. Do you want to talk about it? Not really. But the short version is she cheated. I found out. I ended it. Adriana nodded slowly. That must have been really hard. It was. But I'm better off now. You seem like you've got your life together. I smiled. I'm working on it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're doing great. It was a small moment, barely worth mentioning, but it felt like validation. Not just that I'd made the right choice, but that there was life after betrayal. That I could be happy again. That I could be more than just the man Rebecca had married and discarded. I saw Rebecca one last time in early March. I was at a restaurant downtown with Adriana, celebrating my birthday. We just finished dinner and were waiting for dessert when I saw her across the room. She was alone, sitting at the bar with a glass of wine, staring at her phone. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Her hair was different, shorter, less styled. She was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual power suits. She looked up and saw me. Our eyes met for a moment. Neither of us moved. Then she stood up, like she might come over. Like she might try to talk to me. Adriana noticed. You okay? Yeah, I said, not looking away from Rebecca. That's my ex-wife. Oh. Adriana glanced over, then back at me. Do you want to leave? No. We're staying. Rebecca took a step toward our table, then stopped. She must have seen Adriana. Must have seen the way we were sitting together, comfortable and easy. Must have seen the birthday candle the server had just brought out. She stood there for a moment, frozen, and I saw something on her face. Regret, maybe. Or just the recognition that this was really over. That I'd moved on. That the future she'd mocked me about was now unfolding without her in it. Then she turned around, left cash on the bar, and walked out of the restaurant. I never saw her again. Adriana squeezed my hand under the table. You okay? Yeah, I said. I really am. It's been almost a year now since that Christmas party. Enough time for the dust to settle, for the story to fade into corporate legend, for new scandals to take center stage. The Ironwood merger was a massive success. The integration went smoothly under my oversight. Both firms combined seamlessly, and the resulting entity has been profitable beyond projections. I was promoted again in September, Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. I bought a house in April, not the one Rebecca kept. I didn't want that one. Didn't want the memories. I bought a new one across town, modern and clean, with a yard for Cooper and a home office with a view. Adriana moved in with me in August. We're taking things slow, building something real. She knows the whole story now. I told her everything one night after too much wine and not enough filters. She listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions. And at the end of it, she said, "I'm glad you got out. You deserve better than that." I think I'm finally starting to believe her. As for Rebecca and Dante, I don't think about them much anymore. Occasionally, someone mentions them in passing. Rebecca apparently moved to a different city, took a job at some small consulting firm for half her old salary. Dante disappeared completely. Last I heard, he was working in sales at a tech startup, nowhere near the executive track he'd been on. The beautiful irony of it all is that they destroyed themselves. I didn't have to do much beyond stop protecting them. The system did the rest. Dante made a toast, mocking the man who had veto power over his entire career. Rebecca laughed at the husband who'd built the compliance framework that would eventually catch her. They both assumed I was powerless because I was quiet. That was their mistake. People confuse silence with weakness. They think because someone doesn't make noise, doesn't demand attention, doesn't fight back immediately, that they can be dismissed. But sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous, because they're watching. They're learning. They're documenting. And when they finally act, they don't do it with yelling or drama or public scenes. They do it with precision. I think about that sometimes. About how close Rebecca and Dante came to getting away with it. If Dante hadn't made that toast, if he'd just kept his mouth shut and waited for the merger to close, they might have pulled it off. Rebecca might have gotten her VP title. Dante might have gotten his promotion. They might have quietly ended their marriages and started their new life together. But pride got in the way. That's what always gets people in the end. Not the crime itself, but the arrogance that makes them sloppy. The need to gloat. The inability to just win quietly. Dante had to humiliate me one more time. Had to make sure everyone in that room knew he'd won. Had to raise his glass and toast to my failures and his victories. And that one moment of arrogance cost him everything. Sometimes I wonder if he understands that yet. If he's put the pieces together and realized that his entire downfall can be traced back to those 6 words, to the loser paying for our future. Because the loser ended up holding all the cards. The loser just had to decide to play them. Last week, I was cleaning out some old files and came across the draft of that separation agreement, the one I'd put in the lockbox with the sticky note. I almost threw it away, but something made me keep it. Not as a reminder of what Rebecca did. I don't need reminders of that anymore. But as a reminder of what I did. I planned. I documented. I waited for the right moment. And when that moment came, I executed perfectly. Not out of rage. Not out of revenge. Just out of a calm, clear understanding that some things can't be fixed, only ended. The merger that was supposed to make Dante a VP made me a senior VP instead. The promotion Rebecca was angling for went to someone else, someone who'd actually earned it. The future they were toasting to at that Christmas party is now my present, and they're not in it. Adriana asked me once if I ever felt guilty about what happened. If I ever thought I'd gone too far, been too calculated, too cold. I thought about it honestly before answering. No, I told her. They made their choices. I just made sure their choices had consequences. That's very rational, she said. That's very me. She smiled. Yeah, it is. I keep that draft agreement in my desk drawer now, underneath my passport and birth certificate and other important documents. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Being underestimated is only a disadvantage if you don't know how to use it. People looked at me for years and saw a boring compliance guy who paid the bills and stayed in the background. They saw someone who could be walked over, mocked, dismissed. What they didn't see was someone who understood systems, who knew where the real power lived, who had spent years building relationships and credibility with the people who actually mattered. Rebecca thought Dante was powerful because he was loud and confident and commanded attention. She never understood that real power doesn't announce itself. It just waits quietly until it's needed. And when it acts, it doesn't leave room for appeals or second chances or do-overs. It just changes everything instantly and completely, and then moves on. That's what happened that night when I walked out of the Christmas party. I didn't storm out to make a statement. I left because I was done making statements. I left because I had work to do. And by the time Rebecca and Dante realized what was happening, it was already over. They were already finished. They just didn't know it yet. I think about that sometimes when I'm sitting in board meetings or reviewing merger documents or signing off on deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I think about the fact that none of this would have happened if Rebecca and Dante had just been smarter. If they'd just been content to have their affair quietly, to wait until the ink was dry on the merger before making any moves. But they got greedy. They got careless. And Dante got cocky. So instead of achieving their dreams, they destroyed their careers. Instead of riding the merger to success, they got left behind while I took the reins. And the man they toasted to as the loser paying for their future, he's now the man who controls whether they have a future at all in this industry. Turns out I wasn't paying for their future. They were just borrowing time on my goodwill. And when they ran out of that, they ran out of everything. A lot of people have been asking what happened after. So, here's where things stand now. The merger I saved has generated over $400 million in revenue in its first year. My role expanded twice. I'm now Executive Vice President of Strategic Operations and Corporate Compliance, with a 7-figure salary and equity in the company. Adriana and I got engaged last month. The ring is nothing like the one Rebecca used to hint about wanting. It's better, simpler, more meaningful, chosen together instead of demanded. Rebecca tried to send me a LinkedIn message last month. Just 2 words, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. What would be the point? Sorry doesn't undo 8 months of betrayal. Sorry doesn't rebuild a career she destroyed. Sorry doesn't change the fact that she chose poorly and is now living with the consequences. Dante sent me nothing. I hear he moved to Phoenix and is working in residential real estate now, selling houses instead of running mergers. I'm sure he tells himself it's a new chapter, a fresh start. It's not. It's the natural consequence of burning every bridge you ever crossed. People ask me if I'm happy now, if the revenge. They always call it revenge, even though that's not what it was, if it was worth it. I tell them, I'm not sure I understand the question. I didn't do this to be happy. I did this because it was the right thing to do. Because people need to learn that actions have consequences. Because marriages mean something, or they should. But yeah, as it happens, I am happy. Happier than I ever was with Rebecca. Happier than I thought I'd be a year ago when I walked out of that Christmas party. Because I'm living proof that sometimes the quiet ones win. Sometimes the people everyone underestimates are the ones who change everything. Sometimes the loser they toast to is just a winner who hasn't shown his cards yet. What about you? Have you ever had to deal with someone who completely underestimated you, only to regret it later? Tell me your stories in the comments below. I'd really love to hear them.